in programming, you have to troubleshoot quite a bit because you will indefinitely have different types of errors. They occur frequently. It's easy to make errors. It's easy to leave off parentheses or the end quote. So you need to know how to troubleshoot and what the different types of common errors are. This table shows some of the different types of errors. Syntax errors, as you know, when you are programming in Python, for example, there's specific syntax and the way that you write the code. And each programming language has its type of syntax. Some of them you have to end a line in a semicolon. If you leave the semicolon off, it will give you an error, for example. So with Python, if you violate the syntax of Python, it will give you a syntax error. This indentation error, certain lines of programs need to be properly indented. So if you violate that, you might get an indentation error. There are value errors where you receive an error if you have an invalid value. For example, if you are trying to take text and convert it to an integer. So if your text is a name, for example, it will not let you convert it to an integer and you would get a value error. In name error, you might be trying to use a variable name or you misspell a variable name and it will give you a name error saying that the variable doesn't exist. And you might get an type error if, for example, you are trying to add a number to a name. It's going to give you an error there. So let's look at a couple of errors. Let's look at this one, which is a runtime error. And they say it can crash the program or cause it to stop running. So a runtime error is a type of error that you would get during the running of the program, and it will stop the program. In this example, you have printing salary is, and it will print the result of this calculation. So we have that here in this line. And then we say print integer, and we want to print whatever the user has entered for the input here. So we've got enter integer, and the user's input Henry, although we've asked for an integer. So what it's going to do, it's going to stop the running of the program and give you this value error. And in this case, it's trying to convert integer from whatever you've input, and you input text, and it can't convert that to an integer. And so it will stop the program, and it's going to tell you the error is in line 5. So you'll count down to your line number 5 and see if you can translate that error message into what's actually wrong in the program. And let's go to another one. This is a syntax error, and it's telling us when it runs the program, it's trying to go in and run this line and execute that line. So it tells us that it's on line number 7 here. You can't have two print statements on the same line, so it considers that a syntax error since you violated the norms or the rules of the programming language. What you would have to do to correct that is to go in here and press enter so that next print statement is on the next line. So you need to get a lot of practice with programming. Making errors is not necessarily a bad thing. Knowing how to correct those errors is what you need to learn. And obviously, the more practice you get with making errors, the better you will be at troubleshooting and catching those errors as you go through your programming. A last note on correcting these errors and understanding the error types is to troubleshoot efficiently. So if, for example, you have multiple errors in your program, try to correct one error first, then run the program and then try to correct each error individually. Another thing to keep in mind is that as you write your programs, once you have a chunk of code that you can test, run that chunk of code and then see if it has errors. If it does correct them, make sure that you have that correct, and then write the next chunk of code. If you can do that, it will make your troubleshooting a lot easier rather than writing the whole program at one time and having multiple errors and not being sure of what's affecting which other part of the program. If you test it in chunks as you write the program, it might make things a little more efficient for you.